Hey guys, this is Mark Goldberg. Welcome to the program. Welcome to the show. Let's talk about Sinn, but before we do that, let's go ahead and make the quick fist watch check happen. Guys, I'm a dog trainer. Please support me and this channel by buying a copy of my latest book, The Art of Training Your Dog. Hardcover or electronic, you can get it globally. If you're not a dog lover, buy it for someone who is, and subscribe to this channel so we can do this again soon. Throw a like on this video. Now let's get along with the fist watch check. And of course, today I am wearing the watch in question. So let's talk about this brand a little bit. Let's talk about this watch. First, I need to read you off the serial number because they do kind of long model numbers, not serial numbers. Model number, this is the 105 STSAW 105.011. Let's call it the 105 white. Now, the 105 comes in two iterations, and you can get it with a white dial or a black dial. One of those iterations is a UTC designation, and that means it has a GMT hand, which this one does not have. And then the other one, of course, is this, which has the rotating 12-hour timing bezel, which doubles as a dive bezel. Now, I do have the Sinn 104, and all the dimensions are the same for this watch as to that one. So let me quickly reprise those. Then we're going to turn this camera around and do a review. Okay, so the width we've got 41. The thickness we have just a smidgen under 12. We can call it 12. 20 millimeter lug width and a 47 millimeter wingspan, or a lug to lug. So it's an eminently wearable watch, but especially with that white polar Arctic face, it has like a little bit of wrist presence, that's for sure. And of course, you got the pop of that orange seconds hand. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about this watch, and I will be making certain references to the 104, which is the pilot's watch. And then later I'll make you a video with a head-to-head comparison. But right now we're going to review the 105. Well, here we are taking a quicker look at the 105. And you can see that it has a very unique design. I like it quite a bit. It's what I would call a minimalist design. Bauhaus, perhaps. Reminds me a little bit of the Mies van der Rohe School of Architecture. Mies van der Rohe, the famous architect who once said less is more and more is less. And this watch does its function with an extremely plain design that pushes certain elements of the watch, including the angular architecture of the case, which I dearly love. The case is actually identical to the 104, the pilot's watch, the exception being the finish. So the watch case is bead blasted, and the bracelet is matte finish. Maybe it's also bead blasted. I'm not entirely sure because the finish does look the littlest bit different. Now, it's a little hard to see on camera, but I will tell you on the wrist, the matte finish of this bracelet, the H-Link bracelet, glows with almost the way a Rolex does. If you've ever held a Rolex Submariner, you'll know that their matte finish is just impeccable. They do it brilliantly. And so does Sinn. So on the wrist, this fairly well glows. This is a very slightly domed crystal, as you can see here. The bezel is bidirectional, and we need to talk all about that bezel in just a moment. But first, finishing up with the case and the bracelet, we have a display back. Now, it's a Sellita movement, and what I can tell you is Sinn super regulates their watches. They're not COSC certified, but who cares? They're actually more accurate than almost any COSC watch that I have at all. Now, this one is new, so I can't tell you how it's running, but my 104 is running like minus a half a second per day, maybe. So I can assure you, if you like a regulated watch, the German watch company Sinn does an excellent job there. Now I want to freeze the video here real quick because there's something critical that I forgot to tell you about the bracelet. On each side of the link there is a hex screw, and Sinn provides you with 2 Allen wrenches. You need to insert an Allen wrench into each side of the link in order to turn one and therefore be able to remove the screw. When you're tightening them back down, just go till you meet resistance. If you force it, you're definitely going to shear off a screw, and then you'll be 1 screw short of a full deck. Now, the bracelet's got several micro adjustments. It is milled out, as you can see here. Everybody, and of course, this is laser etched. Now, as you will have heard on many Sinn videos, really probably the only complaint that you can make about these guys is this folded clasp, which is stamped and folded, but the clasp itself is milled out and very nice. Yes, they could do something about that. However, they do give you a dive extension on this watch, as they do on the 104, and that is beautifully milled out. Still got stickers on it, so that's why it looks a little funny here and here. Okay. The crown is signed. Oops, let's get you on camera, buddy. The crown is signed and very well knurled, so the feel, the grip, everything about that is beautiful. And they say this is a gold rotor, but like I don't know if that's gold plated or solid gold. Anybody know about that gold rotor? Somebody tell me in the comments. I find it a little difficult to believe that that's like a solid 18 karat gold rotor. However, it is decorated and signed. And although this is a fairly plain movement, it's always interesting to see the workings of the watch. And the rotor is quite pretty anyway. Okay, and then of course you've got some designations and stuff here, made in Germany. Let's talk about this bezel for a moment. The first thing is that it is bidirectional. And the other unique thing about it, of course, is the fact that you will see that it is what we call the poor man's GMT. So this watch is showing 11 o'clock right now. But if I wanted to show the time in, let's say, Manila, I would set it thusly. And Manila, this is 11 a.m. here in Chicago area, and Manila it is 1 a.m. right now. You just have to know your AM and PM for your second time zone. So actually, I think it's a really quite a nice travel watch. Theoretically, if you were going on a short trip, what you would do is you wouldn't even change your local time. But if I were to travel somewhere else in a different time zone, I would leave this here, and that way I would know what my home time was, and I would set my bezel for the local time where I found myself. You know, that's like, if it's just a few days. If I was going for a month or something like that, then what I would do would be to swap them. But it's quite nice. That's how the bezel works. Now, and you also get the count up, the elapsed time bezel of a dive watch. So of course, if you want to time something, you just set it here and you can, it's a 60 click bezel, guys. So you can just read off the elapsed time on the smaller inner scale here. The bezel is steel, PVD coated, and then tegamented, which means it's very hard and it shouldn't scratch. Now, the 104 has an aluminum bezel, and mine has scratched up a little bit, but not a lot. It's really quite a nice bezel. That is shiny. This is matte finish and hardened. So in theory, it won't scratch, although to me, this watch is quite new. I've just basically unboxed it. So I can't tell you yet how that's going to age. We'll talk about that again at another time. Now let's talk a little bit about the dial and the hands. I mean, I think probably the most striking thing about the dial, other than this bright white matte finish, would be the fact that they have stacked the day and the date at 6. That is a really unique presentation of the day and the date, and I like it quite a bit. I mean, I find it extremely useful to be reminded what day of the week it is, and this does that nicely, and it does it in a unique fashion, so I quite like it. The 104 displays the day and the date in the typical fashion at 3 p.m. or 3 o'clock. I do think they could have bolded up the fonts a little bit more. you're seeing a shadow here, so it's a little hard to tell. Let me see if I can turn it for you guys. There, a little bit better. I think they could have bolded the font or the text that they're using for the day and the date a little bit more than they have here. But I'm guessing that the idea was to not have it distract from the overall balance of the dial. So I forgive them for that, not a problem. There are two elements of this watch, though, that I find slightly less forgivable, which keep it, in my opinion, from being a great watch. I'm going to have to classify this as a very good watch. I'm happy with the purchase, but there are two things that, in my opinion, prevent it from being what I would call a great watch. And the first is the bezel action. You know, on the 104, the pilot's watch, it's extremely tight. Now, if you've ever encountered a bezel which is annoyingly tight, it's not that. It just feels quality driven. The turning action on this one is lighter, much lighter. I would say probably half as light if you're familiar with the Sinn 104. Now, there is no backplay, which is, thank goodness, because backplay is intolerable. There is absolutely a positive detent on every click. They are audible. I'll bring it up to the microphone for you. You know, so there is a satisfying click there. It's definitely not going to move on its own, but I'm just a little disappointed by that action. The you know, if a Tudor bezel is the gold standard of a 60-click bezel, and I think it is, then the 104 is a little behind that, and this is significantly behind those. So I object. I would like to see them tighten that up a little bit. That could be personal tastes, but you know how we guys are. We find bezels satisfying or not. And I would call this acceptable. I wouldn't call it great. And the other thing, time will tell. I need a little bit more time to play with this watch, but I can tell you that the lume, they tell me that it's super luminova, but it's blue or bluish. And they say it's C3. Okay, but here's the thing. I don't know if you can see it, but the application of the lume on the indices, I think it's fairly light. And therefore, I'm going to need to go through a couple of nights with this puppy, but I can tell you that even after 10 or 15 minutes, this much I know now, the 104 is outshining this a lot. So I would call its lume good, whereas the Sinn 104 with the same case and same basic style and same H-link bracelet is spectacular for lume. And this to me seems to be adequate, barely. Now I reserve the right to change my opinion on that after I spend a little bit more time. These are indeed first impressions, but I'm pretty familiar with the basic aesthetic and practical use of the Sinn with this case, the 104 and the 105. So, disappointed? No, I'm not. I'm happy with this purchase. It's a striking watch. It's really beautiful. I think it'll make a great travel watch. And so I have a couple little criticisms of it, but boy, from the standpoint of the aesthetic and the finish and what I assume will be spectacular accuracy, I'm quite happy. But guys, if you're stuck on incredible lume and crazy good bezel action, you're going to want to avoid this one. However, if you like the aesthetic, this is a lovely watch for the money. One final parting wrist shot, guys. I love the aesthetic of this watch. I really love the fact that it has the day and the date stacked there at the 6 o'clock position. I love the stark white against that black, so that black and white ethos or aesthetic is just super appealing to me. And then you have that splash of orange with the seconds hand. So I'm extremely happy with this watch. I will let you know in the future whether the lume is better than what I thought it was and how it stacks up. So against the 105, I'm going to make you a special video showing those two side to side, but I wanted to give you some quick impressions. For whatever reason, there are a lot of videos of the UTC version of this, but I didn't want that. I don't like that little extra weirdo hand. I'm not a GMT watch kind of guy anymore. This is the one that I'm interested in, and I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for being with me. Goldberg. Peace out.
Paint the sky.